everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be wrapping up the books that I read in November, and I read a lot. I was supposed to be writing for NaNoWriMo, and I didn't. Instead, I read a lot. Like, I read 26 books in November, which I'm proud of myself. Although at the same time, I'm disappointed because it meant I wasn't writing it all for NaNoWriMo. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just talk about the books that I read and some stats. Of course, the majority of the books that I read were romance, but not all of them were. I did read 2 classics and 4 fantasy novels that the main plot point was not romance, even though some of them had romance in them. Well, I guess you could say 5. I don't know. I don't know. I did DNF 2 of these books, and nearly half of these books I listened to the audiobooks, which is crazy for me. I never listened to that many audiobooks, but I've been just like devouring them during work because I've mastered like the pause and listen. I've also been like, I re-downloaded The Sims 4, so while I play, I've been listening to an audiobook. I've been doing a lot of puzzles, and I've been doing some other crafty things, like I've been trying to knit a hat, so just a lot of things that I've been doing that I can listen to an audiobook while I'm doing it, and it's fantastic. So I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks, and that's obviously why I read 26 books in November. And then I'm also, I did listen to quite a few of the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees for the romance category for the first round. I think a lot of these have been cut, unfortunately, since then, but I still really enjoyed them. So yeah, let's just go ahead and talk about the books that I read this month, and I'm going to start off with the books that I own the physical copies of, even though I only physically read one of these books. The rest of them I did listen to the audiobooks for. So first, the 2 classics that I read. I read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes for my library book club. This is just a collection of his stories. I honestly felt like it was a bit mediocre. There were 2 in here that I thought were really good, and the rest of them were kind of predictable and just a little bland. A lot of the ladies in my book club disagreed. But we are also very different people, so that's okay. But yeah, so it was just fine. I would be interested in reading like different Sherlock Holmes stuff that's actually more thrilling, I guess, or I don't know. I think they're just so short too that it's just not enough for me. And then I did my buddy read of Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux with Jessica from Lady Homestead Reads. I'll put her information in the description box. Go ahead and check out her channel. She's great, and she does a lot of reading vlogs every week, which I love watching. And we read this. She liked it more than I did, but I think it's definitely a right book, wrong time. I think this book could be something that I'd actually really enjoy. It's just, I'm into romance right now, you know? Like, this year has just been a romance year. And, I mean, this does have a romance in it, but it let me down, and I feel like if I had read this before seeing the musical, it would have been great. But having, like, the musical is, like, my favorite musical. And, like, I saw it live for my 21st birthday, like, I love it. And, so it was just very disappointing. The characterization was so different. I also listened to 2 different audiobooks, because I had borrowed it from my library, and then I had to return it, and then I just got another one. And both of them were so bad. They were so bad. And they made, both of them, which I find very strange, made every single character whiny. And I just like, that doesn't even make sense. So I don't recommend listening to the audiobook if you want to read The Phantom of the Opera. I'm gonna hold on to this. I want to reread it eventually. Maybe I'll forget about my trauma with the audiobooks and then just reread it and hopefully have a better experience with that. And then for my personal book club, we read For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten, which is, I mean, it's supposed to be a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, which it is a little bit, but it's more of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which is fine. I love a good Beauty and the Beast retelling. So it follows Red, who is the second daughter of this like royal family. And so the first daughter becomes queen, and then the second daughter is like sacrificed to the wolf and the woods. And it's kind of just like uncovering the mystery behind what actually happens in that scenario, and then, you know, trying to solve the problems of this fantasy world with the woods and the things that happen in the woods and whatnot. It was good. However, I didn't love it, and it really, really reminded me of Uprooted by Naomi Novik, which I liked so much more. It's a very similar concept of like a girl being sacrificed to a beast, and then there are issues that the girl like has powers and she learns how to like do things and then saves the world and blah blah blah. I mean, she doesn't save the world, but like it's a very similar concept, and I just felt like Uprooted was executed better, and I just liked, and this completely like preference here, I just liked the issue and the way that it was solved in the end of Uprooted better. This is also the first book in a series, so there's more to it. So maybe I'll like the second book, but the second book is to do with the first daughter, so the girl who becomes queen, and her character was a little less interesting to me, so I'm not super excited to read it, but we'll see. I like fantasy, so we'll see what happens. And then going along with all of the fantasy, I mean the very little fantasy, but more than I've been reading in the past few months, I did reread A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I listened to the audiobook, obviously, because that's all I've been doing, and I really enjoyed it still. I'm working towards rereading A Court of Silver Flames, and I just wanted to, you know, refresh, you know? And this one was my favorite before A Court of Silver Flames, but I have to tell you, I really like A Court of Silver Flames, and I think mostly because, like, there's no plot, and it's just a lot of romance. This one is still good. I like the plot in it, and there were some things that I had forgotten or just kind of fell back to the back of my mind, so it was a good refresher, and I'm going to continue reading. And then I did finish the Folk of the Air trilogy with The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I'm giving the series 4 out of 5 stars just because the first book was not my favorite, but the second and the third books, fantastic. This follows two twins, Jude and Taryn, and it follows Jude more, and they are human, and their mother used to be like the wife, I guess, of a Fae general, and she escapes. They grow up in the human world for like their first few years of life, like I think they're between 5 and 10, I don't remember how old they are. And then the general comes and murders their mother because he's a jealous asshole, and he ends up taking responsibility for the twins, and so they go with him to live in the Fae world, and they grow up in his household, and he treats them like his actual daughters. And Jude wants to live as a part of the Fae world, but she is very strong-willed, and she doesn't want to be like a consort or, you know, just a girl who sits on the sidelines like Taryn does, whatever. She wants to be a soldier, and so she fights and she argues, and she's very strong-willed and kind of stubborn, and she ends up falling into this plot, and things happen, and there's so many twists and turns in the series that it just made it so good. It's very politically focused. I know a lot of people keep saying that there's, like, this is a big romance. There's a romance in it, but it is nowhere near the main plot point. It's very political, which is fine. I really enjoyed it in that way, just because there were so many twists and turns. So, very good. I highly recommend this series. I do want to warn you, though, the first book is very hard to get through. Like, by the end, I mean, like, the majority of that book, I hated all of the characters. I hated the main character. The twist at the end of the first book is the only reason why I continued reading, and then I actually liked the characters more. So, highly recommend. And then I did finally finish the Brown Sisters trilogy, and I read Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This one was very good. So this follows Eve Brown, who is the youngest child. She's seen as like immature, she can't hold a job, and so her parents kind of kick her out and say, you need to get your act together, act your age, get a job, do something and stick with it, and we'll give you our support back, basically. And so she ends up going to this bed and breakfast where she's like, oh, they're hiring a chef. I could do that. And so she goes there to interview and ends up hitting the owner of the bed and breakfast with her car. And so because he's injured and he's kind of desperate for a chef, he basically unwillingly hires her. And it's cute. It's very cute, like grumpy sunshine, and I just really like it. The one thing that I didn't like about this book is that there's mention of autism and just neurodivergency, and it should have been a bigger part of the book, I think, especially compared to Take a Hint, Dani Brown, where they talk so much about anxiety in that book, where you feel like going into this book they would mention more about Eve Brown's experience like as a woman with autism who may be on the autism spectrum, but they don't. They kind of just mention it and just gloss over it. So that was a little disappointing, but I still really liked it. I highly recommend this trilogy. I think it's very good. My favorite is Take a Hint, Dani Brown, then this one, then the first one. But all very adorable, and I really enjoy Talia Hibbert's writing, so highly recommend. And then I'm just gonna quickly talk about my DNFs. First, I DNF'd Blood Crown, I think by Elizabeth Brown. This is an indie romance where the main character becomes queen and she ends slavery in her kingdom, and then people don't like that, the other kingdoms don't like that, and it's just like a very steamy romance where it was getting like boring because it was so steamy, which sounds really weird, but it was just like, okay, I get it. There's nothing that was keeping me interested at the time, so maybe if I go back and read it, it will that time, but I just had to stop reading it. And then I attempted to listen to a Spindle Splintered by Alix E. Harrow. This is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. The reason I had to DNF this book, so it is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and our main character kind of gets sucked into the world of Sleeping Beauty. She meets Sleeping Beauty and blah blah blah, and she talks about Disney parks, and she tears down Disney park employees. And I get this is fiction, but as somebody who works in customer service, that really pissed me off, because I don't know if you've ever been to Disney, but like those people are good at their jobs. I mean, sure, there is going to be an occasional park employee who is having a bad day or just shouldn't be working there, but like to tear down employees like that, customer service workers, like that just bugs me. Like, it bugs me so much as somebody who works in customer service and gets phone calls where people say shitty things about our customer service or us. Like, we're human beings, okay? And so, like, for her to tear down Disney park employees in that way, I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not okay with that. So yeah. That might be a silly reason to DNF a book, but it really bothered me, and I got past it, but like I just kept thinking about it, and it was just distracting me from the actual book, so I was like, I'm done. I'm not gonna do this anymore. So that might be ridiculous, but it's just how I was feeling at the time. And then some of the other fantasy books that I was reading, I listened to The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo, which is very short, and it's about like the handmaiden of the Empress of Salt and Fortune. Like she's just telling, or they're just telling their story, and I don't remember a lot of it, and honestly I feel like it's a book that I need to reread and pay more attention to, because it was pretty early in my audiobook reading of getting into the process of reading while also working, so I think I missed a lot of it. So honestly I'm not going to really talk much about it because I missed too much to give you good information about it, except for the fact that the main character is non-binary. Another of the audiobooks that I just loved so much was the How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is kind of the follow-up to the Folk of the Air series. This is like just a short stories about the King of Elfhame. It was so fun. It's about Carden, who is he's the cruel prince. So it's about him and how he grew up and a specific character that he meets at different times in his life. It was very good. I really liked it. I liked learning more about him and also seeing a bit more of his and Jude's relationship. So it was good. I really liked it. And then I read 5.5 of the Zodiac Academy series, which was, what is it called? The Big Ass Party. If you know, you know. This is a novella, and I stupidly read it because I thought I had just finished the 5th book, but I'd actually only finished the 4th book, so I spoiled myself a little bit, but it's okay. I mean, I kind of already knew what was going to happen, and it was fine. There's the one character in the Zodiac Academy, which she's very quirky, and it's fun. However, this novella, I felt like the authors took it way overboard because she talks in like this really ridiculous way, and it was so annoying to read in her perspective. It's just like ridiculously annoying, and so that's why I did not love this. And then the 2 Tessa Bailey books that I read Hook, Line, and Sinker, which is the 2nd book of her sister series, with the first one being It Happened One Summer that came out this year. This Hook, Line, and Sinker doesn't come out until next year, and this is about the other sister. And it's a kind of friends to lovers romance. I did not like it as much as It Happened One Summer, just because it was very slow, I think, and it wasn't as steamy as It Happened One Summer, which was a little disappointing. But it was good overall. It was cute. I just didn't like it as much. And then I also read Halfway Girl, which is a little like insta-love novella. The main characters are both in college. They're kind of like super, I don't want to say naive, but they're both like very pure of heart. And so reading them it was just an adorable kind of like insta-love, cute little romance. The 2 historical romances I read this month was the first one, Devil in Disguise by Lyssa Kleypas. This is the first one of her books that I've read. I don't understand the title at all. Like, I don't get who is the devil in disguise. I don't get it. Like, I don't. It was fine. I felt like, I know this is like, I think this is a spin-off to one of her other series, which is maybe why I didn't like it as most other people have. I will be reading more of her books, but this definitely was not my favorite. And then the other historical romance was also not my favorite. If You Dare by Kresley Cole. Kresley Cole is like my favorite paranormal romance author. I love her Immortals After Dark series. Which I can't wait for the new book to come out next year. But If You Dare is the first book in her historical romance series. This book reminded me a lot of Outlander in the way that it was, like it had a romance in it, but I don't feel like the romance was the focal point. It was a lot about this woman and her family, being kind of blackmailed almost by this person who wanted to marry into this royal line and blah blah blah. He's not the hero. He's the villain. And so it's about that, and then like the hero is a mercenary who worked for the villain and then gets away from him because the villain tries to kill him. And so he kind of kidnaps almost our heroine. I mean, like, she wants to go with him for her own safety, kind of, and then it's a whole situation. And this is why it reminds me of Outlander, because like there's so many layers to it. It's not just a straight romance. So if you like the adventure aspect of Outlander, I highly recommend this historical romance. It just wasn't my favorite because I wanted more. I wanted more romance, so it just wasn't my favorite. But I might continue reading in the series. 2 Kindle Unlimited romances, and then one that was not on Kindle Unlimited but was recommended. Dangerous Temptation by Giana Darling. I would call this a mafia romance, even though like they don't like explicitly say they're mafia, but they are like a crime syndicate family type of thing. I honestly felt it was really boring, and I can only remember the fact that the main character, her parents died. Like, honestly, I don't remember a lot about this book, and people were raving about it, and I was like, I don't like this. I thought it was very boring, so I don't recommend it. And then somebody recommended Helena Hunting's sports romance series, which is about hockey, and I read the first one called Pucked, which was fine. I did have a couple of issues. Well, I had a major issue with it, and then the two main characters, well, the heroine is like super, like in the beginning you don't expect it, but throughout the book she gets like weirder and weirder. And the hero is also kind of weird, so I mean it worked for them, but like there's a scene in the book that I was like, why is this happening? This is like the weirdest thing. Anyway, what I don't like about it is that our hero is kind of characterized in the hockey world as a player. And he perpetuates this story of him doing this thing with multiple women so that he is not seen as gay because he doesn't sleep around. And so I felt like this book did not age well because it's like, I think it was written in like the early 2000s maybe. And it kind of like, it's kind of in this way, like the hero is trying to explain his like poor reputation as him trying to not be seen as gay because being gay is a bad thing. I mean, like, I mean, it's dumb and it's horrible, but like in the sports world, how being gay is not accepted, especially at that time. I found it really annoying that he was like saying, oh, I had to do this because I can't be seen as gay. And it was like, come on, it's 2021. But I think this was written early 2000s, so I mean, like, I get why it was written that way. It did not age well, and for that reason I didn't love it, but it was super steamy, so better. And then the other book that I read, which was also a hockey romance, because I was like, I want something better, and this one is actually a male romance, so of course they talk about the whole gay people in sports thing more appropriately. But it was Game Changer by Reid, and this one follows a hockey player who he's having like a rough time in his game where he hasn't been doing so well, and then he goes to this smoothie shop and orders a smoothie, and then that day he ends up winning or doing better in the game and they win or whatever. And so, like, you know, in sports where they have their rituals, so he does it, he keeps going back. And so the guy who makes him the smoothie, they kind of have a romance. It's cute, and it does talk about how, you know, he has been hiding himself, like, forever, for his entire life, because he's been in hockey for so long. And then there's like a great conversation about sports acceptance and like the fellow players who are like his family, like accepting him. So like obviously this one's gonna do a lot better in that way because it is a male romance, and that's why I liked it more. It was also very steamy. So I mean, I will probably continue in the Helena Hunting series, but this one was definitely better. And I read quite a few traditionally published romances. I listened to Isnt It Romantic by Lyssa K. Adams, which is the fourth book in the Russian, where you find out that he has been married this whole time, even though like the other guys in the book club think that he's joking, but he has been married this whole time, and his wife is actually in another state, another city, going to school for journalism. And you find out like they had this marriage of convenience, and the Russian wants to have an actual marriage. He gets into an accident, so she kind of has to take care of him. And then I think my favorite part is the fact that he himself was writing a romance novel, and the Bromance Book Club kind of like helps him with it, and it was so cute. I really liked this one. And then I listened to Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. I really liked this book. It was freaking adorable. It follows this woman who is the manager kind of a like a retirement home for rich white people, and she's kind of almost sheltered in the way that like ever since she started working there, she's lived there, it's become her whole life, she doesn't really do much else. And then Our hero is introduced because these two old women who live in the retirement home, they need an assistant, and so they put an ad and he ends up showing up. He interviews with these two old ladies and they end up hiring him, and they are ridiculous. Like, they are crazy white old ladies who are just like, they're at the end. I don't want to say that they're at the end of their lives because that's kind of mean, but they, you know, like, they've lived their lives, they want to do what they want to do, and so they'd make him do the most ridiculous things. The way that they decide to hire him is that they give him like $100 and it's like, you have so much time to come back with a white shirt. And he succeeds, and so like that's why they hire him. But then they don't like the shirt that he bought them, so he has to bury it. And they don't like where he buried it, so he has to unbury it and then to bury it somewhere else. But they don't actually like that place either, so he has to rebury it in the first place. So it's like ridiculous things. And this guy's also like super tattooed. He rides a motorcycle, so it's like not the type of person you would expect to be taking care of these two old ladies. So it's really freaking hilarious in that way. And him and the manager of the retirement home kind of build this friendship, which they end up falling in love, and it's adorable. And it's just like a great book about both of these characters kind of learning to accept the way that they are. It was so cute. Like, I really enjoyed reading this book. Like, I sped through it. Like, I finished it in one day. Once I had finished work and I still had some left, I was like, okay, well now I'm going to do a puzzle because I want to finish this audiobook. So highly recommend. It was very adorable. I will say it's not very steamy. I don't think Sally Thorne does a lot of steam in her books, which, I mean, whatever, but like, it's still a great book. And I read Shipped by Angie Hockman. I listened to the audiobook. This book, I think is a great read-alike for The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Because it has that same aspect of two people who are kind of rivals at work and they're competing for a promotion, and they hate each other. So our main character, I think they're like in marketing or something like that for a cruise company, and so their boss is like, I want you to actually go on this cruise so you can experience what our customers are experiencing, and that way you can build a better like marketing whatever. What I liked about this book was the fact that, one, the cruise was so fun. The whole part where they were on the cruise was a very fun part. And then it also talks a lot about how men, white privileged men, kind of take advantage of women in the working world. And it shows like this group of women and kind of the love interest working together to kind of bring down this horrible person. It was a great book. Highly recommend. My absolute favorite romance that I read this month was How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. I had seen this book for so long, and for some reason I always thought it had something to do with stand-up comedy, because if you look at the cover, there's the guy in the background who's kind of sitting on a stool, and I thought like he was holding a microphone or something and that he was on a stage. Like, I don't know why, that's my first thought when I saw this cover, but he's actually sitting at a bar. So it has nothing to do with stand-up comedy. But this book is about this woman who she's a professor who works in education for STEM. Her past has a lot of trauma in it. So check your trigger warnings. This book has a lot of mention of abusive relationships and domestic abuse. So definitely, if that's something you're sensitive to, I would skip this one. So because of this past relationship she's very insecure in relationships, and she just hasn't been living her life. And so her friends kind of like mention this to her, and they kind of set her up with this list of things to do, and one of them's, I think, is like flirt with a stranger or something like that. And she goes to this bar and flirts with a stranger, and they end up seeing each other throughout the book, and they fall in love, and it's beautiful. It's so good. The book was fantastic because, again, it had this the romance in this was so great. Also very steamy. I really enjoyed this one. And it also had that great element of talking about things like domestic abuse and you know, abusive relationships, and also women in STEM and the things that they go through. It's just like a fantastic book for people who think that romance is just fluffy, and like there's no point in it, or you don't learn anything from romance, or blah blah blah. I highly recommend reading this book because there's just so much depth to it while having a great romance at the same time. So highly recommend. 2 indie published romances that I read. First, I read the first book in the Winston Brothers series by Penny Reid. I think it's called Truth or Beard. All of the books in the series have ridiculous names that have something to do with beard. So this book is about this girl who is a teacher, and she's the daughter of the sheriff in town. And it is her goal to, you know, make enough money so that she can live her dream of traveling around the world. And so she is back in her hometown after coming back from college. First of all, the opening scene in this book is fantastic. It's so funny. She dresses as Gandalf for Halloween at her school where, you know, she's a math teacher. And then she goes to this party later in the day, so where she's not at her workplace, so she can dress as whatever she wants. So she ironically dresses as sexy Gandalf, and it's so freaking hilarious. So funny. Anyway, and then she kind of comes across this guy who she's always had a crush on, who is one of the Winston brothers, and he has a twin, and she hates one twin, and the other twin is the one that she has a crush on. And then there's a mix-up, of course, that she actually makes out with a twin that she thinks she hates, even though he has always loved her. Well, I really liked this romance. I definitely will continue with the series. The one thing that really annoyed me with this book, though, was it was fade to black. However, the parts leading up to the fade to black were pretty explicit, so I don't understand why it was fade to black. I'm just like, if you can talk about that, then why didn't you just finish out the scene, you know? I felt it very annoying. Anyway, so that was my one issue with this book. And then I read The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which is the first book of her off-campus series. This one also happened to be a hockey sports romance. I mean, it wasn't like too heavy on the sports, but all of the hockey. Anyway, this one is about a deal that these two people make because the girl aced this test that a whole bunch of people failed, and so this hockey player who needs to keep his grades up so that he can play hockey is like trying to convince her to help him pass this makeup exam. And she's like, no, no, I'm not gonna do this. He's a little bit harassing her, and I'm not okay with that part, but they eventually come up with this deal where he'll like he'll help her basically get her crush, and then she will help him pass the exam. And of course, instead of falling for the crush, she falls for him. It was fine. I felt like this was it was a little hard to get through. I will continue with the series eventually. But yeah, I guess I recommend it if you like college romances. 2 more books to go. The last 2 that I read were the first 2 books in the Reindeer Falls series, which is the Christmas novella series. The first one being The Boss Who Stole Christmas, and the second one is If You Gave a Jerk a Gingerbread. The first book is about an office romance. It's again with the thing where like the heroine thinks that the hero hates her, but he doesn't actually hate her, kind of thing. They go on this business trip in Germany. She also loves Christmas, and so they go to this place that's like the inspiration for their company, which is a Christmas, and it's a toy company, so they're very heavily Christmas people, and so they go to this town that inspired it, and so like it's a Christmas town in Germany, and she loves it, and it's adorable. I liked that one a lot. If You Give a Jerk a Gingerbread is about this series follows a group of, so far this family, and this one is about the next sister, who is a pastry chef, and she does this competition, a gingerbread competition, because she's trying to win this money to open up her own restaurant. And then the hero is a popular chef who has like his own series on the Food Network, and she thinks that he's trying to steal her gingerbread recipe, and he's not. He loves her. Very Christmassy, very cheesy, very Hallmark-esque, but adorable nonetheless. And I'm going to continue reading them this holiday season. So yeah, these are on Kindle Unlimited. Highly recommend. And now my throat hurts from talking so much about all of these books. But yeah, this was a great reading month. Read some really good romances. And yeah, pretty excited about that. I'm also freaking happy that I read more than romance, because, you know, gotta branch out of it eventually. So that was my November wrap-up. I think the best book I could say was definitely How to Fail at Flirting and The Queen of Nothing. Those were my favorite books of the month. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please tell me in the comments what your favorite book you read in November was, and I'll see you in a new video soon.